Hello, everybody. I am the Orca Man, Fred, and today I am here with Salma. Salma is a Sightings Network Coordinator and Data and GIS Analyst for the Whale Museum, who I've been in contact with. How long have we been in touch? Like 2 years now, I think.
I always, when I talk about you to people, I always say, like, you started emailing me as soon as I got hired. So I feel like I've been hired. Yeah,
When
so
did you
it's,
get hired?
I started like very end. I sometimes don't even feel like it qualifies because my first day was like December 27th, 2019.
Uh,
And then it was like, okay, you have the next few days off for New Year. So it's like December, January. What is
yeah.
2020 anymore? But yeah, somewhere in there.
Well, you also entered then right at the beginning of COVID.
Yeah,
You had like
I
two
did.
months.
I did. Yeah. I started right before the world decided to go upside down. Yes.
So fun.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when in that process, when did you end up going to the San Juan Island?
So it's kind of like I already knew that I was going to be moving up there
Yeah.
in like October-ish. Jenny, who's the executive director of the Whale Museum, and I have been talking about getting the funds together to create my position. And then like October, it kind of happened, like the stars aligned, and getting like I had to cut off a lease, and I was tutoring kids at the time in the Bay Area, and so I had to take my kids through the rest of the semester and kind of just like get my things all in line and you know drive a giant moving truck from Oakland up to Anacortes and then get on like the ferry and then show up on this island. So yeah, like I knew about it for a couple months before I actually moved up there. But then like I didn't really like set foot on the island as the Sightings Network Coordinator until like end of December.
Wild. I was gonna say because I can only like one of the biggest things during the whole pandemic that I can remember is like sitting here and trying to decide where I wanted to stay during it. And I was like, okay, like, is it
Yeah.
here? Is it back home or otherwise? But being on an island for the whole of it, I actually really didn't think about that until right now. Like that makes a big difference.
Yeah, it honestly, okay, I don't know if I'm gonna get like crap for this, but like I was so thankful that I was on this island for the pandemic because like don't get me wrong, I loved Oakland, but living in Oakland was hard. And I mean,
Yeah.
I'm from like a city area. I'm from the DC metro area. And even then, like living in Oakland was just like between like just like Bay Area prices and then also like constantly having to worry about street sweeping or like, like your car windows getting smashed in. Like I had a license plate like, stolen off my car.
Yeah.
And it was just like, add all to that, like, just like germy people. I think I would have lost my absolute mind living in like any city.
Yeah.
But like just Oakland specifically, because that's where I was at beforehand. So I was very thankful to be on an island. Very, very thankful to be on an island for the for
Or
quarantine.
I was gonna say with like a whole like 3,000 people who you probably ended up like recognizing by the end of it too. Like, that's one of the things
To be
with that
quite
is like it's
honest,
so
no,
small.
because like I never my house. No.
Oh, fair.
I never left my house. No. I got groceries delivered. I was that person. I just honestly, it just like messed me up in the head because I was just like, people were like, it's the flu, but then we just didn't know anything about it. And I was just like, you know what? I'm 26, 27. I'm not that anymore, but like, I'm not interested in getting like heart disease for the rest of my life or like lung disease for the rest of my
Yeah.
life. So I was very much like keeping my butt at home. Like, that's
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a good way to be out of it. So earlier when you were saying you were like getting ready to go over, you said you and Jenny were talking about like creating your position.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
did it exist?
Sound,
Like how did
yeah.
that come about?
It didn't exist as a standalone like position. It was
Yeah.
always kind of like an add-on. And before me, it was Jennifer Olson,
Mm-hmm.
who is now a faculty member at Everett Community Colleges. She works with the Ocean Research or CA, like the acronym is ORCA. It's Ocean Research Conservation Academy or something like that.
Cool.
I'm gonna mess that up, but it's part of the Everett Community College system, and I think it's for like high school students that are taking like college level classes before they actually graduate and things like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Anyway, so Jen was the Stranding Network Coordinator and the Sightings Network Coordinator.
Okay.
And also a lot of other things. She was a curator at one point. Yeah, so Jen did everything.
Yeah,
And
she's all over the place.
yeah, so it's kind of like from Jen, like budded 3 individual positions. And I think I'm one of the most like recent ones, because the curator was kind of had budded off, if you will, from Jen a couple years before me. And there was always a curator, at least a couple years prior to my starting. But yeah, so the Sightings Network was the last thing that kind of budded off of Jen. And Alyssa Scott, who is now the Stranding Network Coordinator.
Yeah.
At the Whale Museum. Yeah, so that's good. Did I answer that question?
Yeah, I'd say so. So
okay.
When Jen left, they needed people for the Stranding Network, Sightings Network, and then the curator position is kind of moved around. Dealing with the Sightings Network, and like I can say this pretty sincerely, I don't think I've ever seen a data or GIS analyst as a position at the Whale Museum ever.
No.
So that was also something that was like built up.
Yeah, well, I think it was kind of like I think I should give Jenny full credit for that, because I just happened to be in the right place in the right time. It's not like I was like plotting over here.
Yeah, definitely.
Jen. So it kind of starts off like a few months prior to me even just like finding out about this position, and so it was like this Jen Olson was moving on and to her current role now with Orca. And her stranding position was like advertised on Marmam and all those things. And I was an intern. I was one of I think I was actually Jen's first intern, stranding intern. Yeah, I'm just like, yay. I love Jen so much. She's great.
Oh, yeah.
So I was an intern back in 2015 at the Whale Museum, and I was like the Stranding Network intern. And so when her position was open and I had just finished my master's at the time, I was like, oh, this is perfect. And unfortunately, I didn't get that, and I was bummed out about it. But it turned out that Jenny had ulterior motives for like me, because after I kind of got that like news that sorry, but thanks, but no thanks, like you're not the best fit for the Stranding Network position. She came. I had just come back actually from a field trip in Vietnam with my graduate advisor. And Jenny was just like, so I've been talking to WDFW and like NOAA or whomever that ended up like, I know where my grants are, but yeah. And I think we can get the money together, and I'd really like to have a GIS person be the Sightings Network coordinator, because she really wanted that skill built up at the museum. So that was kind of like Jenny's whole thinking, because she interviewed for the stranding position. I mentioned that I had just finished my master's in GIS, and she was like, oh, you don't say.
We're going to use that. We have a different place.
Yes. And obviously I didn't know that. Like I had just gotten the news like, hey, sorry, we're not going to go with you for stranding. I was kind of bummed. I was actually in Paris at the time. I was just like I was walking through the Louvre, and I was like checking my email because I was just like so tired. My friend Jordan and I, we had just like literally we didn't sleep for 3 straight days. And it was just like the Louvre was the last thing, and that museum was huge. And I remember she was just like really into looking at something, and I was just like sitting on the floor and I'm just going through my email, just like my feet hurt. And I got that news, and I was already like sad and tired and hungry, and I was like, no. So like that's how I remember that I didn't get it. Anytime I think about that, I'm just like, wow, that was a weird space to be.
Oh yeah. No, it's so in a number of ways too. Like for the Whale Museum, it's so like locked into one location. I forget that like a lot of the people not from the island to start with, let alone like no, not a place you'd expect to get that email. At the least.
No, not at all. Like, I wasn't even expecting to get it that way. I was just kind of like killing time on my phone because I just couldn't keep walking anymore.
Was that just a trip for fun?
Yeah, it was kind of like treat yourself, because I just like finished my master's, and
yeah.
my friend Jordan was working in Sierra Leone at the time, and she was going to take, so we're both from like the DC, Maryland area, and Virginia, DC, Maryland, Virginia. I'm not going to leave off the Virginias because I'm on the Virginia side. Yeah, and so we like just were like, hey, like, do you want to meet up for a few days in Paris? And I was like, yeah, sure. I really want to go eat some actual croissants.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, it makes all the sense in the world. That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Okay, so once you've finished your master's and you get settled on the island, COVID starts, whatever. What did you kind of walk into for projects with the position? What are the first couple of things they threw at you?
Yeah, so I inherited a couple things, and a couple things were like new for the role. So one of the big things that I inherited was the Orca Master contract report that we do in conjunction with the National Marine Fisheries Science Center. And that is a big annual report that compiles all reported southern resident killer whale sightings that have been submitted to the Whale Museum, either through our immediate channels or through like partnerships that we have with other organizations, and putting together all those data for the year, and putting them together in this report with all these like figures and maps. Maps. That's why the GIS thing keeps coming back. It's like it's not like I just happen to be in the right place in the right time for that. And so that's the big contract report, and that honestly does, I think about that every day, the whole year. So like ad infinitum. So that's just because it's like the primary support that makes my position possible. And there was also the couple things that were new to me were working with WDFW to kind of help support the like the RAS initiative, and I don't know if you've heard much about that.
No, I haven't.
So RAS stands for the Whale Report Alert System, and this is one small part of the big ECHO project that was spearheaded by like the Vancouver Port Authority, and it's a BC program. ECHO is a BC program.
Yeah.
And so excuse me, in 2019, in October, when Jenny and I were first talking about like the possibility of creating this position, she invited me up to Seattle as part of like the governor's Orca task force.
Yeah.
To talk about like the impacts of large commercial shipping activity on marine mammals, specifically resident killer whales, because they are so endangered. And that's where I kind of started getting my footing into the like primary hat that I wear in my job, which is supporting the RAS and building up its use in Washington state water. So up until Quiet Sound was created, it was always called ECHO South. And now it's actually called Quiet Sound, which is the ECHO equivalent. Sorry.
You're good.
Which is the ECHO equivalent in Washington state waters. And it encompasses a lot of different things. The one component that I'm actually working on or, a part of is the RAS initiative. And that is to support the RAS, we ultimately have to support, like sightings data entry. And right now, the only way by which you can submit sightings data to feed into the RAS is through the Whale Report app, which is the public facing side of that application. And so I've been working with the BC Cetacean Sightings Network. Well, technically Oceanwise. I work with the BC Cetacean Sightings Network when I'm asking as the Sightings Network coordinator, but then when I'm working with them for the RAS stuff, I'm working with Oceanwise. So again, small nonprofits, so things kind of get like it's the same people. So that's why I kind of those two big stuff. So I work with Dr. Lauren Dares and Jessica Scott up at Oceanwise with Oceanwise.
That's really
fun. Yeah.
Well, no,
Yeah.
like Lauren Terrace gave me this book.
Cool. That's
As
awesome.
was,
Wait,
like I didn't realize that you guys were that close, or like worked that closely together. No, that one was what is it? It was Operation Orca, because it was written by like Lance Barrett Leonard. He was one of the authors, I'm pretty sure. Nope, Francis and Hewlett. I lied. Lance Barrett Leonard is just in it. But no, besides the point, that's the cross boundary collaboration there is huge. That's amazing.
Yeah. So that's a really cool. That was a really cool project and initiative to just like be brought into like from the beginning. It has been, because of COVID, it has been pretty. Yeah, just because a bunch of meetings and a bunch of like just like a bunch of like work that we were all planning on doing to kind of like spread awareness about like the RAS and whale report, and like communicating with, you know, like whale museum members and things like that. Like
Definitely.
everything kind of was just like slowed down by the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not to say that this is, you know, totally hasn't, but it's just been a lot slower than I think anyone was kind of like hoping for.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Well, also
But
too, when
everything else,
everything's
obviously.
when COVID happens too, with that, like not only is the collaboration a little bit harder, but also too, like nobody's out.
Yes. Yeah. There's like no one going out, so it's
No,
like
so it's like the sightings have to be like extremely lower than previous years. I'd imagine the past two.
It's funny that it's not.
Really?
Yeah. So yeah, there was definitely like I was expecting. So when my interns were entering data for me in the beginning of 2020 data, yeah, things were a little quiet, and then by April, May, June, there really wasn't a difference in like pre-COVID years and post-COVID years. So
when the people who were going to pay attention to see whether or not they were here, they were doing the same stuff at the end of the day then.
Yeah. And then I would even say like, and this is all anecdotal, right? Like I haven't like sat there and like counted specifically. It just seems that way just based on like the sheer number of like pages of data that have been entered. Yeah. And so it's just like, I really think that because of COVID and all of the like, you know, group restrictions and gathering restrictions and things like that, that people were able to do things like renting a boat on their own instead of maybe going out on a whale watch, you know, going out and whale watching on their own. This is again like me all like speculating and so I would like just, I don't know. I think actually because people couldn't like gather inside safe anymore, they were doing way more outdoor activities, and you know the San Juans, a lot of that involves whale watching.
Yeah, and also even if you're just on the coastline at all, like there's a better chance. If you're hanging out on the coastline for a week, like you're going to have your eyes out at the least. And if you come across anybody else, hey, put it into the sightings network X, Y, or Z.
Exactly. Yeah. And actually, I didn't even think about that. Like a bunch of people like started road tripping more, right? And like during the pandemic, and like, I wouldn't even say we're after the pandemic anymore, but like, yeah, now people road trip just a lot more. And so I think, you were getting a lot. I don't think like sightings have actually taken as big of a hit as people might think that they did.
That's pretty nice then.
Yeah, for sure. But that gets into other issues of like, are all of these people who are more or less like out of towners, right? They educated in like the best practices as how to interact with and like view wildlife safely for both them and the wildlife. I don't know, but that's not my area.
No. I was going to say, changing ecosystem, somebody else can go and look at that.
Yeah, I was just like, I am not about to wade into that mess. Like, I'm not doing
it. It's its own beast, to say the least. No, that makes all the sense in the world. So you working across border, it comes with a lot of challenges in a number of ways. Even I had to, if I would imagine, be kind of like systems in place for gathering sightings data in BC and the States are not the same. So BC, they have the Whale Report app. Does that cross over to like Washington?
Yeah, you can definitely download it and use the app if you're not in BC waters.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's not like the apps are not restricted geographically. Okay. The only thing that is restricted is people's movements.
That much is fair.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, because the animals are also hopefully like not being restricted by the border.
Yeah, that would be the biggest goal.
Yeah,
no, not at all.
Yeah. So I think the apps work just fine in BC and waters. Yeah. And that was the whole kind of point behind this like collaborative effort, is to not reinvent the wheel and, you know, use a pre-existing tool that, you know, was already painstakingly created.
Yeah.
Which in this case is the RAS, to, and then just like, you know, just get people on board in Washington State and to kind of like build it up and, you know, use it to actually inform mariners of nearby animals in the area.
Yeah. So even I'm going to ask you to expand upon that just a little bit further too, because the Whale Report alert system, I actually have an idea of what it is, only because like I've talked to Lauren days before and I've looked before. Yeah. No, but if you could, that would be excellent.
Yeah. So the Whale Report alert system is a tool that is only for like mariners that operate large commercial shipping vessels. So what that means is like tankers, cargo ships, the ferries. It excludes smaller vessels, smaller commercial vessels like whale watch operators, and it also excludes small recreational, like private vessels and things like that, and like charter boats and things like that. So it's geared specifically towards large commercial shipping activity. And I don't have like the pictures and stuff of like how, I think you should actually invite like Jessica Scott or like Lauren Dares to come on to your show and talk more about it, because they definitely do a really great job communicating their tool. And also this is a podcast, so people can't see anything anyway. But yeah, so it's so the tool basically, it's like a map that like an operator of a large commercial ship can access either through a desktop app, and the mobile version is it's not the most reliable, because if you're operating large vessels like that, you're not actually allowed to have your phone with you. So there is like a desktop app for the RAS and things like that. But you can basically, as an operator, you can like zoom into, you can pick like your zone of interest that you say you'll be like navigating through or transiting through, and it will populate any live sightings in the area, and it'll kind of like, and these sightings kind of like drop off in time based on the species. So for example, if it's a killer whale sighting in zone 1, like I think killer whales, like their sightings remain active on the map for like an hour or so, because they don't really hang out very long unless, you know, they're repeated sightings. Humpback whale, probably like 6 to 12 hours, and like a larger whale, like, I don't know, like a gray whale or a minke might be around for like 12 to 24 hours. So I don't fully remember like how those sightings were like stratified, but so that's basically the premise of it. And that's because especially like the problem of shipping is not going away. The problems of shipping activity and the impacts of shipping activities on specifically mammals, but you can argue the entire aquatic environment, like marine environment, are only going to get bigger and more problematic than they already are. And so this is a tool that we can help mitigate the negative impacts of these few like negative impacts that these shipping activities have on marine mammals. So it's like specifically like noise reduction and speed reduction to avoid like ship strike collision. More that than the noise reduction.
Yeah.
Slowing down does reduce noise, but yeah, I think it's like mitigating the impacts of ship strike is the
Yep.
primary of this.
Well, yeah, ships are also so incredibly large that if you're not actively paying attention, it could be very, very easy to miss that kind of stuff. Like
Yeah, I
that,
mean,
like
for
how high they
most
are and things
like
like that. Yeah.
yeah, I mean most large ships don't even know that they've hit. Like you think of a blue whale as like this is the largest animal that has ever lived, like period, bigger than any dinosaur, bigger than any other living organism that we're aware of in the fossil record or that is currently or that's extant. And they are so small thanks to these giant like ships, and
Yeah.
it's crazy, and like most ships won't know that they've hit a boat, that they've hit a whale until they come into port, and then they see that there's an animal like just strewn across their bow, like that's, and even then that doesn't always happen, so they don't even feel like a bump in the road, if you will.
No.
It's like sometimes like the animal will get hit and then it will just like sink to the bottom because of its injuries. Sometimes it will strand.
Yeah.
And then, if it's close enough to like a population center, if the currents are favorable. But yeah, most ship strikes go wildly unreported because they're mostly undetected. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna
and
say
it's not
you
anyone's fault.
no, you can't possibly with the infrastructure that's been created for them, you can't there's nothing that was like put in to even try at the least. And also too, like the
Yeah.
size of them, with
Yeah.
regard to like
Yeah.
people not understanding, I even because I live in Vancouver and down in like Burrard Inlet, there's like
Mhm.
anywhere between 10 to 15 like huge cargo ships or tankers that will hang out all the time. And even walking down, like from the beach, they look incredibly massive. And the stretch from here, like the body of water of Burrard Inlet from like North Vancouver to like Kitsilano where I am, it's like 5 to 6 miles. And
Oh,
the
wow.
like yeah, the boats though that are like 75% of the way like closer to North Vancouver, they still look absolutely massive.
Yeah.
Like it is
Yeah.
ridiculous. It's the closest that I think I've ever been to like actually seeing them consistently, because people might see like small boats or things like that in coastal communities, but I know Vancouver, at least like this port, is one of the only ones where I've been able to like even kind of conceptualize how large these things actually are.
Yeah, and the thing is, like, if you want to take Vancouver and like multiply it by like at least 10
Yeah.
up and down the entire like North American West Coast, like, because people don't realize like how much shipping activity is occurring on the west coast of North America. It's like,
Hmm.
okay, you have Vancouver, and then right below that, you have Seattle. And then you go down a little bit, you might have, I think you definitely have a couple like near Portland. I don't know. Oregon's weird. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get, ooh, yeah.
Astoria.
I don't know much about Oregon. This sounds bad. But then you go down to California, you have like San Francisco Bay, and then you also have like Los Angeles. It's just like you have these massive population centers that are accompanied by these massive like ports, and that literally is like, I would hazard a guess like a good percentage of like the global like shipping activity is coming in and out of just the North American West Coast, and it's
Yeah.
like, a few, maybe like 5 to 10 major ports, but like
But
they
they
are
they are
busy.
they're working. Yeah, because especially too, not only does
Busy.
it go up and down, it goes across the Pacific. Like it goes up into
Yeah.
Alaska to Russia. I know for guaranteed to a bunch of places in Oceania and
Yeah.
in Asia. Like
Yeah,
guaranteed.
yeah. Yeah, I
It's
mean, if
like
you just like want to keep expanding, like the magnifying glass, if you will, right? Like
oh
if you
yeah.
want to go up into like near Alaska and Russia, like you have all that shipping activity for like oil exploration and things like that. It's just like the problem of the impacts of shipping are like inherently global because these ships are like
Everywhere.
literally like crossing entire basins in periods of time that are like were once incomprehensible to like mankind, and now we're just like how do you think you have your 2-day shipping from Amazon, right? Like, come on.
Yeah. No, it's absolutely insane.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't think about it. I'd want to talk, because the thing that I forget a lot of the time too is like the process for 2-day shipping. Where does it go? Who are the people that touch it? How many hands did it pass through from the start to the end? But also too, like, I couldn't imagine working on one of those. Like being
No.
on a ship the size of a city going like through the Alaskan, it's not tundra's land. But going through like the Pacific Ocean, like that's not a cruise ship.
No. No. Yeah, no, it's just like, I just don't, it's like the problems that we have now, sometimes I get like really overwhelmed because I'm just like, okay, yeah, we're like looking at like the impact of ship strikes on large marine mammals, and then like you keep pulling like what we just did, right? You
Yeah,
scan
just
them
extrapolate.
and you're like, oh, and you're like, the problem's way more complex to the point where you're like, this isn't even the problem that I was working on. So it's helpful to kind of like expand out and like think about like the broader context in which you're like operating. But it's also important to remember like you're one individual and you're trying to tackle like one problem, and even then within one problem you're not trying to fix the whole thing, you're trying to do like a wee itty bitty thing, and there are like, that's fine because there are people all over the place, like all over the world, country, whatever, right?
Yeah.
That are also working on the other little bits of the problem that you can't work on. So it's fine, but yeah.
Well, that's also the nice part about having as many people as we are like working in these areas.
But yeah, no, like I definitely have a bunch of people like that are just, dedicated observers, and they will like religiously report, and I have, like A plus reports. And then I also reports from people who are just visiting the area, right? Who have never seen their names. They're not on our list of like reliable observers. And so they're entered in as a public contribution. That's not to say that there's anything less than about that. I don't know, I always feel weird when I'm like, oh, is this sighting reliable or is it public? And it's like, yeah, it's like, I don't think that one is inherently better than the other. It's just that the nature of the person who reported was maybe a longtime contributor to the museum, or is a researcher out on the water, or is an organization that we've partnered with, so there's like
the way to organize data.
Yeah, exactly. And so public observers are honestly really great because it's really like, when I'm talking about it like this, I'm just like, oh my God, it's so much fun. But then when you're entering the data, you're like, no. But it's really just like nice to read about like people's like first interactions, like, or first observations of marine mammals, like when they go out on like, like they're just out visiting different parks, or if they're even out on a whale watch or whatever. And it's just really, really cool to kind of like read all their like really enthusiastic comments about like, oh my God, we saw these whales, and just like freaking out. And you're like, okay, cool. Like I'm just pulling out like the information I need, but it's still like, and it was still cool to be like, oh, this person's first observation of like marine mammals in the wild is now in this database like forever.
That's amazing.
Yeah, so it's a really cool. I really like how long term this database has been, but also just like how it's been, just like this wide call to action to like contribute to it has been like made over the years. So it's a really cool, eclectic little collection of marine mammal observations.
I was going to say, and also like it's so like one, you put out the call to action, but the amount of people that have answered, even just for the way you're explaining it now, has to be like ridiculously immense, which makes it even more fun because it's
and like
becoming a little bit more, or becoming greater as time goes on too.
Yeah, and especially with like, cell phones, like now everybody has like a mini computer, right? In their, you can't see this, has like a mini computer in their pocket, right? And so I think like the technology has only like facilitated like this information sharing, just like generally, but also like specifically in this way for us. So yeah, it's been really cool to kind of like be a little part of that.
That's awesome. The databases that you have, how far back do they go?
So we have observations in there that go back to 1948 from like the Whale Museum archive, because the Whale Museum is still a museum. I think people forget that.
Yeah.
I forget that. Yeah, the Whale Museum is still a museum, and so we have like archives from 1948 and like sightings. Yeah, and so that's pretty cool. But the whole like initiative of like systematically collecting and compiling these data for long-term use or for sharing and things like that didn't really start till 1976. So it's still been around for a good minute, but yeah, like the oldest records that we have in there from our archives are like 1948 or so.
That's amazing. Yeah, that's very insane to go all the way back. And also too, like the 1976, having information on a specific population of marine mammals in any part of the world, 1976 is a long time to have that like data. Like
Yeah,
I don't think people like in general understand that.
Yeah. I mean, 1976 is what, like almost 50 years now?
Yeah, or 40, yeah.
Yeah, it's like 40, it's like 40, whoa, we're in 2021,
76.
right? So it's like 45 years.
Yeah.
Did I do my math right?
You did your math exactly correct. I need to use the calculator myself.
I was like, did I carry my one right? Yeah, but yeah, like 45 years is still a long time. And then I also just wanted to say, kind of clarify that even though southern resident killer whales are like the sweethearts, if you will, this data set includes like sightings data for all marine mammals in the Salish Sea that are observed in the Salish Sea. So I have been very much trying to expand that language a little bit, just because like people, like the whale museums, kind of like mascot, if you will, is a southern resident killer whale, and like those Definitely. Are the animals that we champion, but we champion all marine mammals. And so I'm just trying to kind of expand that language a little bit so that people, when they do see, a harbor seal, like as common as they are, like yeah. They will still report that observation, because I think that it's like this job is especially realize that it's not about collecting the really interesting observations that like pop up in time. It's about consistently collecting these data over time to build a really robust picture of what this ecosystem is like, at least at these higher trophic levels, right? Because we're still talking about marine mammals. But yeah, so I think, I just wanted to like put that disclaimer out there. It's like, yes, southern resident killer whales, we always want those sightings. Yes, but also all the other marine mammals, please.
So yeah, that's amazing that you go. What do you think is this, or what is the smallest scale of marine mammal that you would look to record? So harbor seal, does it go smaller than that, or is it?
I don't think so, because harbor seals are just so ubiquitous in waters. It's just like, I mean, so like, I guess like the thing is like people that pinnipeds are marine mammals. I'm just like, no, like, and Alyssa, who's the training coordinator, she'll also like back me up on this one, because it's just like people don't realize that like, like seals and sea lions, like we have harbor seals, Stellar sea lions, and California sea lions. We don't get Californias as often. They're not as abundant, but they are definitely out here. And people are just like, I just don't think people realize that they are, their numbers are more or less like they're going to have a direct impact. They're going to be directly impacted by what's going on in like, the killer whale realm, because like transients prey upon other marine mammals. A lot of them are going to be like small seals and sea lions, and the seals and sea lions, they feed on like salmon, which is, and other fish as well, but they're more kind of in competition with southern residents. not in the same way, that's for sure.
Mhm.
So yeah, there is some contention over that, but yeah, so it's just like whatever's happening in the killer whale realm is also going to impact like the pinniped realm. It's going to impact other small cetacean realms as well. But yeah, like that's why I'm so like, I want all of the sightings.
I need everything. Need the robust
Yeah,
database
I
in order
want
to
all of
figure
them.
out. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, because everything's interconnected. Like nothing is in a vacuum unless you put it there, right?
Yeah.
But
Well,
like
that's
all of
also,
these animals are interconnected.
I can only imagine it gets a little bit exciting when you come across a public um, settings report of some of the smaller animals. Like, oh my God, we got a
Yeah.
sea lion from like somebody who I've never
Right?
seen before.
Right? Yeah, those are my favorite because I'm just like, oh my God, they saw a harbor seal and they absolutely lost their minds. Like, it's amazing. It's awesome. And it's just like, you, like, it kind of helps keep you, like, I don't know, like, just interested or engaged in the like animals that you constantly see on a day to day. Like, you don't even have to be like, you know, a marine mammal scientist or whatever
Yeah.
to just like, you know, just get like bored with like harbor seals
Yeah.
after a little while. It's just like, it's just nice to like be able to see something that you think is so common that you take for granted through the lens of somebody else who hasn't seen them ever or doesn't see them regularly and is so excited by it because it makes you kind of just like look at it again in that new like frame,
Yeah.
and it just makes you feel, I don't know, it keeps you grounded.
It does. It does. Well,
Yeah.
also like, no, I speak for myself, and you can tell me if you feel the same. But like, you don't really enter this realm for any other reason than you're like interested and excited about the stuff.
Right.
Like
Yeah.
it's almost a reminder of that, because even like it's been really, really fun and interesting to do even the TikTok like at a very, very basic level. As much as like it's really just me posting dumb stuff on the internet, it's like every so often you'll get people that are like, oh my God, I'm so excited about this stuff, and like this is the kind of things that I've been like looking at and otherwise. And like I forget what it was like to, or it was a reminder of how fun it was to like really start getting interested and excited. And
Yeah.
like when you learn like something really, really big, like, oh my God, what a, like that excitement is like, it's shared. It's just like, it's a
Yeah.
reminder. It really grounds it, and it makes it even more fun. It's like, oh no,
Yes.
I want to do
Yeah.
this.
Exactly, exactly. Kind of just like it helps keep that pulse on like that little like kid in you
Oh
that
yeah.
was already like interested. And just like, you know, just anything that's like, and honestly, yeah, and harbor seals are awesome. Like they're so freaking cute. Like, like give them some love because they're awesome.
Yeah, honestly.
Yeah.
I gotta say too, that was one thing about, because so for anybody who doesn't know, I actually recently went down to Friday Harbor like 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, a while back, October
What
sometime.
is time? No
Yeah,
one knows.
long time. But that was like, I have to say, like I was like, even driving home from that trip, it was kind of surreal because I had been to the Whale Museum actually a year before you were there in 2015, because I was there in 2014 for like a week.
Cool.
And I can remember like being in the San Juan Islands like as a kid, like like as much as I was like, I think 15 at the time, it was like me and my dad going around like trying to see whales any chance we could and stuff like that. But even like walking in as an adult now, being like, oh no, like I like having conversations with you, and then I actually ran into Gloria and Tori from Co-Extinction on my way out as well. They were like coming on. It's wonderful to like walk into the community, and also too, the community's getting younger, I've seen too.
Yeah, like on Friday Harbor specifically, or just like
Yeah,
marine mammals?
well, the people that are working with marine mammals and like entering into kind of the sphere, even like when I was initially looking, when you look at like, when you think about the researchers, I usually think about like 60 and 50-year-olds.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, yeah, definitely. I think like yeah. So I think it's definitely like the demographics of marine mammal conservation practitioners are starting to shift a little.
Yeah.
And it's going to depend on who you ask. Because if you talk to someone like me, I'm like, the shift isn't that great. It's not that
Yeah.
distinct. But if you talk to someone like who's an old timer, they're going to be like, oh, whoa, yeah, that's a big shift, right? So yeah, like I think as a whole, the marine mammal field is getting younger. It's a lot more female than it used to be. Definitely, if you look into higher, positions like staff scientists and like career researchers, you're still gonna get your breakdown of like older men, but the field as a whole is still very white. So that's why if you talk to someone like me, they're gonna be like, I don't really see a difference. It's just like the same thing, just slightly different. And so I'm hoping that like maybe I can start kind of like changing things a little.
Definitely.
Not by being super, I don't know, like how to change, just by like existing, I guess, in this space, like doing work. Not by any sort of like, because scientists do, the minute that you start talking about like identity politics, or you start talking about like changes in like the demographics of practitioners in a particular field, as soon as they start to change, people start getting like really touchy, and they say like, you're not doing activism, like you're trying to be a scientist, right? And so they kind of like dismiss that, but it's like, for someone like me, the two are like inextricably linked, right? It's like I cannot do science outside of my identity, because I am my identity. And so I think the field overall is getting younger. I'm really excited by that. I really hope it is younger and more progressive, and like a little more, I guess, a little less exclusionary, because it's always just felt like very like a old boys club or something, whatever you want to call it. I'm really bad with my American euphemisms. I think as a whole, the marine mammal field is definitely getting younger. I don't really know. Like, I think Friday Harbor definitely is changing, because like I was actually there in 2014. I was not doing any marine mammal stuff. I was working on sand dollars.
Nice.
I was working on the development of like sand dollars at the Friday Harbor Labs with my undergrad advisor, John Allen.
Yeah, nice.
And it's just like it's definitely changed a lot since like I first stepped foot on Friday Harbor back in 2014. But at least to me, I just, again, and it could definitely, like, perspective is relative, right? And to me, it doesn't seem to have changed like that much.
To the extent.
There's definitely like, inklings of little things. Like there's a really hip wine bar, like where I like around the corner from where I live, and there's like there's a really awesome sushi place called Rolling Sushi that I love.
But it's touching, especially in a place like Friday Harbor, where it's like the turnover on the island, I don't imagine is terribly much.
No, I would say turnover is pretty high, just because like, I mean, really? By virtue of like living on the island, it's a very seasonal place to live. So I don't think, I think you definitely get your like long-term year-round residents that stay there, and there are definitely old timers. But I think for the most part, like the islands just generally have like a high turnover of residents, just because of like the seasonal nature.
The seasonality. Yeah. That's fair. With regard to demographics, is there anything that you've seen that has made you hopeful?
I want to like maybe I feel like I can't comment on like the broader community that I live in, but like with the Whale Museum, for sure. Yeah, I think we have a really great team of people at the museum. We recently we had a really a burst of hires, and that started in August 2019 with Alyssa as the new stranding coordinator, and then myself in December as the Sightings network coordinator. Alana Fain came on in March, so you thought I started independent, you started in the thick of it. Alana Fain took over the Soundwatch Better Education program.
Yeah.
in March of 2020. And then just this last like April, we hired Melody Smith, who is our new curator. And like, we're all in our 20s, and like Melody had a degree in zoology, right? Like I don't think the museum has ever had a curator that has a master's degree in zoology before. And so I think if you want to talk about like, you know, having a data and a GIS analyst on staff, it's just like now we have like a kick-ass curator with like a degree in like what she's supposed to be doing, right?
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah, and so I think like I feel that the museum is really set up to do some really awesome work. Just because we have like a really great group of honestly kick-ass women. So I'm just like, yeah. So I'm just like, yeah, we're kind of set up to do really well. And I just hope that, you know, like all of our collective enthusiasm and drive and expertise kind of like propels the museum like forward in a really positive way.
Well, from the work that you've done so far, and even just talking with I forget the names of the two other women that were at dinner with us, but even just talking to you guys that night.
It was Melody and Alana.
Melody and Alana. There you go.
Yeah.
I'd say it is. Do you think that's in large part due to Jenny?
I think Jenny has done a really good job, like of kind of keeping her eyes out and her ears out for like young people, just generally. I don't think she's going out and like, you know,
but keeping her eyes peeled for the people who are going to be most effective at the positions that she needs. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, exactly. So I think she's done a really good job, like in just kind of keeping her eyes and ears out, and also like looking in the right places, like, you know, job boards that do have people that with museology degrees that are looking for, you know, jobs in museums and things like that. So yeah, I think Jenny's done a really great job of like, you know, casting a wide net that is like it's wide, but it's also specific in how it's going about. Like, you know,
definitely conducive to the
right role.
Yeah. At the end of the day, it's the biggest goal, and creating the roles for the right people.
Yeah. Yeah, if you can create a role, go ahead.
Yeah, right?
Yeah, why not? World's your oyster.
That's too good. That is all too good. So this is just a fun one. Like you said, in the Whale Museum, everybody kind of wears many hats usually. Is there any project or thing that you've been given that you kind of looked at and been like, I did not expect to have my toes in this?
I think that kind of goes in like a couple, like I have like two immediate responses to that.
Sure.
So like, I think overall, I didn't expect to have my toes in any of the politics around like killer whales. Yeah. And with like marine mammals maybe as a whole, but it's just like killer whales are a very touchy topic up here. Mm-hmm. So I definitely did not expect that. I knew that killer whale, like, you know, just like with all marine mammals, I knew it was going to be slightly political just because I think the saying goes is that crazy goes with order, like on the Kingdom family, you know? So it's like, as soon as you get to like marine mammals, you're at the like top tier of crazy among biologists. And so I think it's just like, that's part of it, right? And I can't imagine what primate people are like. Okay, cannot. But yeah, I think it's just like stepping into the inherent political nature around these animals. And also, like, I don't want to just say it's politics and just dismiss it. Like, it's politics for a reason, because conservation of animals is so inextricably linked to a lot of our socioeconomic like activities, right? So you want to think about like slowing down shipping activity. All right, well, there's a price that comes with that, right? You want to talk about like regulating like whale watching activities. Okay, there's a cost associated with that, right? Yeah. It's just like you want to talk about like cleaning up the Puget Sound and, you know, enacting like more like strict like chemical or whatever. Like there's a cost that's going to come with that, right? And so
Definitely.
like that's why these like marine mammals as a whole, right, are so political, right? Because their environment is so tied to our like socioeconomic activities. It's not just political because people want to be political, okay?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I didn't expect to kind of like step into that naively. Now I know better. But yeah, it's been a really great learning experience, like kind of like how to navigate that, and like also working with like multiple stakeholders, people from like different sectors and things like that, to kind of like listen to different perspectives. And then from professionally, the project that I kind of took on was this, it was part of like this NIFWIF project, which was the least cost path modeling project. And before I like really knew much about it, honestly, just like looking at it, I was like, oh, like it's just the least cost path analysis using like this. I did that in one of my like master's classes.
Yeah.
Or whatever. Like that's a pretty straightforward analysis. And then kind of like look into it and you're like, oh, this is a lot different than like what it needs to be, what it is. And also it was just like not feasible to do it in ArcGIS, which is how my co-collaborators had like set up the project to like run. And I was kind of like supposed to kind of just like build it up so that it could be applied to the rest of the data set, not just like a year's worth of data. And so what I ended up doing was like I took that whole project and I kind of like translated it, if you will, in R. And that was the first like solo big programming project that I've done. And I hesitate when I talk about it because I still don't feel like it's complete. Funding has like run out for it, and so it's been like shelved. But yeah, it was like I knew I was going to step into that. I didn't know what I was going to step into it in the way that I ultimately ended up. And so that was a really, really cool, like fulfilling project that I learned so much from. Yeah, and I would honestly like hazard to say that it like kind of like motivated me even more to kind of get into this hardcore like spatial ecology realm of like just like especially like biologging and things like that. And you know, these data are not biologging data. It was still like, I think it was like it kind of just like opened my eyes like a little more to this like field that I was interested in and dabbling in. I felt like as a master's student, but then now as like a practitioner, I was just like, yeah, like this is
something you're into.
Yeah.
So going forward, what are the kinds of things that you think you'd like to be doing? Let's say like at the Whale Museum, apart from the Whale Museum, even so, like dealing with like data and ways to analyze it are growing by the day.
Yes.
And I can guarantee you've seen this more than anybody else, especially in the potentials and the realms. Oh no, no one can. No one can.
Yeah.
But what are the kinds of things you either see yourself doing or that you'd like to?
So I kind of have like two little like wish lists in my head. And so like for me personally, my ultimate goal is to go and get a PhD. Like that's gonna have to happen because I've always known that even like before taking on like the role that I'm in right now. And yeah, so I'm like currently applying to places and things like that. So we'll see what happens. And then for the Whale Museum, I have a huge wish list of things that I want to do. So it's just like, I mean, first thing first is I really want to automate data entry because right now it is manual. And if it's not me that's doing it, it's interns who I want to pay because don't even get started on unpaid internships. But yeah, I'm not interested in taking on anyone in a volunteer capacity because that, although it opened up doors to me, it honestly did a lot of internal damage that like now as an adult, like I have no idea how much my labor is worth. And so that's just not a good way to set up, you know, a college student who's just interested in ecology. No.
Definitely.
Yeah.
I respect you a lot for that, by the way. That's
yeah, I mean, like
big deal.
I had made a little bit of a caveat to a couple, like I had an intern last winter and she reached out to me and I was like, no, I don't have money for you and I don't feel comfortable with you working for free for me. And
Mm-hmm.
she was like, I'm already going to be here. I'm going to be working at labs and I just want like a few hours to do a project that you might have help with. And I was like, I need to see proof that you're going to be
Yeah.
on the island anyway. And so she was like already going to be here and like really wanted to help. And then in that case, like I was like, yeah, cool, okay,
Sure.
like you can work.
Like
but,
you're set on the other side. You're doing this almost for fun.
yeah, exactly. I was like, we'll see if you still think this is fun, but okay. It was great for so much. Actually just wrote her a letter of recommendation. She just started college and I just wrote her a letter of recommendation for a summer position that she's applying for. Yeah, so in that one case, like, yeah, I was like, so I just don't want to get called out and like be called like a hypocrite. But yeah, for most things, I'm not trying to take any unpaid interns. Like,
Yeah.
no. Yeah, and so data entry is one thing that is easy for me to delegate out, and I call it as like a data monkey position, and I am frequently that monkey. So it's just, it would be nice if that could be done by a computer and not a person.
That would be awesome.
Yeah, and so I'm kind of trying to figure out how to do that a little bit. With our like various different data partners, it's not going to be 100% automated, but if I can get it down to even 50%, that would be great.
Yeah. Cutting the workload in half is huge.
Yes.
Like,
yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's a reason that annual report takes a year. And honestly, the reason that annual report takes a year is because it takes a year for someone to catch up with a year's worth of sightings data if it's one person entering it. And the pandemic really did a number because we haven't been able to accept like in-person volunteers anymore. And so like historically, Jen, my predecessor, relied heavily on like volunteers through the whale museums, like volunteer network that would come in during like the work day, like 9 to 5, and just hang out at a computer for like a couple hours and help her catch up on sightings data. And then the pandemic cut that avenue off. So yeah. And that's fine. The pandemic ruined a lot of things more important than this, but yeah, and so automating data entry would be like wish list number one. I really want to create some type of like web interface for people to interact with some of the historical data that we have, like not in like a raw data format, like, you know, being able to
story
like
kind of
map.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, story maps is a really great technology. And I want to pull out, like, you know about this, but I want to pull out like individual animal ID data and like behavioral data out of the comments fields in our in the database, because
definitely
it would be nice if we can parse those out a little. And so I'm trying to figure out how to do I was just saying it's kind of hard to process 500,000 data entries at this point and be able to read through the comments in all of them and pick out that information. So definitely trying to figure out how to be able to make that a little more doable programmatically. Yeah, and yeah, we have a couple other projects going on internally. We'll always have Orca Master, hopefully. We're still working with Quiet Sound and Ocean Wise and Washington State Ferries and things like that, to help. Although, once Quiet Sound got stood up as its own program and their director was hired and things like that, that was a process that took some time. And so now I'm hopeful that more progress is going to be made in that front.
Lovely.
But yeah, those are my big wish list items. Yeah, it's just a lot of database cleaning and management, and it's it sounds boring, but it's it's interesting, and the broader impact of it is going to be really, really great. So
yeah, well, not only that too, but once that stuff works well, the amount of things that you can do with clean information that is available quickly is ridiculous. That's
what I learned. It's not all data is good data.
That much is absolutely true. Well, we are hitting about an hour, so we'll just wrap it up for now. Is there, I can leave this opportunity to you to plug anything about the Whale Museum, any organizations, literally anything you could want, even yourself.
Okay. I don't know. I'm interesting enough to plug. Let's see. So everybody knows, you can just like Google the Whale Museum. You can visit the Whale Museum in person. We are located in Friday Harbor, just up from the ferry landing. Come by. I would have to admit that this time of year is not a pleasant time to visit the San Juans. It's just, not. It's just like gray and cloudy and sometimes rainy. It's just cold. Yeah. You can come by in the summer, or you can come by now. It'll be quieter. Whale Museum does close for a little bit in the summer. In the winter time, though, for like internal, like just a bunch of we just do a whole like deep cleaning and inventory of everything.
Definitely.
Let's see. I also want to shout out Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program. The UW chapter is awesome. I was a mentor this summer for two wonderful interns, Paloma Wood-Asimian, who is now a junior at Howard University, and Andrea Pierre, who is now a senior at Pomona College down in Southern California. And they were both wonderful, awesome, two great young women to have for the summer, and I was really, really thankful to be like part of the Doris Duke program. So always and they're taking applications now. So if you're an undergrad and if you are from a historically underrepresented group, you should definitely think about applying to the Doris Duke Conservation Scholars Program at UW. It is 2 summers long and you get paid. And in your second summer, that's when you get hosted, you get posted with a host organization. And so that's how I got Andrea and Paloma this summer. I am not the most active social media person. My friend Ashanti made me get a Twitter account last September. And for honestly, it was Black Mammologist Week. She was like, you need to do this. And I was like, okay. And so I signed up for Twitter because of that. And I still have it. So you can just find me on there. I don't do much other than retweet a bunch of things that I like or like things. So I might not be the best person to also follow, but I'm there. And then all my other socials are kind of private, and I don't use them.
Yeah.
Kind of lame. And then, actually, I should plug this. So I just had a publication that, a publication be officially published. So that was really exciting. And that was led by Long Vu, who is a researcher who I collaborated with my graduate advisor when I was in Vietnam. And so that paper is out. I don't know if it's open access, which is ironic, but if somebody wants the PDF to that, let me know. If I can just read that. And you can also just find, I definitely retweeted that because my collaborator, Michael McGowan, who's he's a marine mammal curator at the Smithsonian, tweeted about that, and I hopped on that train. So so I had that publication recently out, and that's really exciting. So
yeah, congrats. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Of course.
I think that's really it.
That's a wonderful amount. No, it's a wonderful amount of things. Thank you so much.
Really
of course. No, it's been a blast. And also too, we were also talking before all of this podcast thing started. So I was very excited to just pick your brain about this stuff casually in general. So I'm glad to, I'm very, very glad to. Definitely was very excited.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
We'll definitely. Anytime sorry, I'm gonna stop.
No, you go.
I was gonna say, anytime that you feel like you need to have me back on for whatever reason, let me know. So I'm happy to come back.
100%. Maybe when one of the wish lists gets granted or you go on to do amazing things, we'll figure it out.
Yes, if I star in an Oscar production and
Yes,
become super
for
rich
sure.
famous, you
Yep.
can definitely hit me up.
Yeah, I knew her way back. Well, that is
Yeah,
excellent.
I knew her when she was a weird whale nerd.
That's all of us. That's
Yeah,
all of us. Well, it's all the weird whale
not
nerds
all of
out
us.
there. I hope you all have a great day. Once again, I'm the Orca Man here with Salma from the Whale Museum, and we'll see you later. Bottom.